is that me? Nowhere to start.
Thanks very much for coming. So my name is Lyndsay Mann, and I was commissioned by Suzanne van der Lingen and Claire Walsh, who are currently doing a one-year editorial residency at MAP, titled Footnoting the Archive, and it's broken down into 4 seasons, I think, and this season is Voicing the Archive. So I just thought I'd start by saying thanks to the Glasgow Film Festival, thanks to the Glasgow Film Festival, to the CCA for hosting us, and to Suzanne. It's been a pleasure to work together on this. So I thought I would just expand a little bit on the title, Say So. So it kind of stemmed from my own memory, which I imagine was a kind of common memory of being told as a child, because I say so, by a parent or teacher. And I thought that kind of comes about in situations where when there's a sort of lesser reasoned or experienced person in the dynamic that challenges or questions what's unfolding. And this sort of early dynamic seemed like a simple route to think about ideas of knowledge and authority, and more broadly, and how this dynamic articulates hierarchies of knowledge that might play out in other arenas. So in response to Voicing the Archive, I was thinking about forms of recorded knowledges and the ways in which they might be seen or understood to gain value through their being collected and catalogued and stored. What forms of knowledge imbue a voice with enough value or authority to be heard? So this connects to my recent research on voice and uncertainty, in particular in relation to perception, the way we each receive and interpret information, what we understand to be happening in any given situation. And this is informed by our subjective histories, prior beliefs and memories. And in relation to voice, I've considered the ways in which the experience of being heard or not being heard informs our perceptions of ourselves and others, and how our perception of the value of our voice directly affects our capabilities for voice and opportunities to be heard. So for the screening, I've put together works that I think in different ways articulate very well some singularities and commonalities of perception, addressed through individual voices, collective experience and shared history. I've also produced a series of intermissions to sit within the works, and these have been made with recordings from the School of Scottish Studies Sound Archive. So the Sound Archive is based at Edinburgh University, and Kathleen Macaulay, who I can't see there, is the curator of the archive, and my thanks to Kathleen for input towards tonight's screening. The Sound Archive, this is from the website, so I'll just read this. It says, material in the Sound Archive comes from all over Scotland and its diaspora. Over the past 60 years, field workers at the school have made thousands of recordings of songs, instrumental music, tales, verse, customs, beliefs, place names, biographical information and local history. So I thought it was interesting to think that these voices are housed in an academic archive, yet they're relying on memory and individual perceptual experience. So might be described as an archive of uncertain and unstable knowledges, which I would argue are powerful forms of knowledge and have value and authority to contribute to political discourse, but I think often aren't recognised within dominant discourses that adhere to established hierarchies and dynamics like because I say so, which rely on reason and certitude and an idea of a knowledge devoid of the bias of perception. So using the ethnographic archive was a way to sort of fully imbricate the instability of memory within the programme and to cite individual voices among collective voices. And also a way, I thought, to position the local within the global and try and create some points of departure and return within that. And I don't necessarily mean local as specific to Scotland, although most of the accents are Scottish, but more local in terms of the details of experience. That it can be the kind of subtle and quiet perceptions that inform and influence our experiences and attitudes and behaviours. So each intermission, there's 4 in the programme, kind of relates in some ways to the works before or afterwards. And I see the programme as a kind of cumulative conversation. So I thought it might be helpful just to give a brief example of how previous works, this kind of idea of accumulation in my practice, how previous works bleed into new projects in this way, and this idea of departure and return across practice. So, for example, when I was thinking of an intermission to put some space between the Jem Cohen works in the programme, which deals with changing attitudes and securities in America in relation to the Middle East, and the final work in the programme, the Mona Hatoum, which consists of letters between her and her mother discussing exile from Lebanon during the Civil War. I've used an archive recording describing reminiscences of a Scottish immigrant aunt's cooking. And this kind of came from a project I did a few years ago, where I did quite a lot of research into the Spanish Civil War after reading a lot of Pablo Neruda's work. And he was talking about his time in Spain in the 30s. So it turns out that Scotland, per head of population, had more people travel to join the international brigades than any other country in the world. So there was a kind of shared affinity around politics and injustice that spurred many people to travel. And if you could get to London, many people walked to London on foot, you could get passage to Spain. So I met with the author Daniel Gray, who wrote a book, Homage to Caledonia, about Scotland's part in the Spanish Civil War. And one of the things that he had spoken to some men and women that were still alive at the time of writing that had been in Spain, and he was also given access to lots of family archives of letters that had been written from Spain to loved ones here. And a recurring theme was complaints about olive oil. So there was these men and women had travelled from Scotland, and they were perturbed by this unusual taste and texture, and this a sort of slippery, heavy oil that covered everything. And I thought these are the kinds of details that you find in an archive, and they describe feelings of homesickness and articulate otherness, and I think that's important. So between the Jem Cohen and the Mona Hatoum, there's kind of recipes, and I felt this was a way to keep the works connected and talking to each other, but to just put a space between them, to do with home and exile and food and comfort. So that was just to give you a bit of an idea of my thinking for the screening and the project. And I'd just like to finally thank all the artists for giving their work to the screening tonight, and to thank you for coming.
This is the first screening of Crossing the Line, which is a strand that will be carrying on all throughout the festival, so please do feel free to pick up a copy of our programme outside. And also, at the end of the screening, we'll be handing out posters, so do feel free to take one of those. They're absolutely free to take. But without further ado, we hope you enjoy the show. Thank you.